silence drifted across the void. Not the gentle silence of peace, but the cold, smothering stillness that comes after something terrible has happened. Somewhere, out in the black reaches of space, the last echo of a dying world lingered, its signals scattering like ashes in the stellar wind. For centuries, humanity had been quiet. They had expanded, settled, and carved homes out of barren rocks and golden worlds alike. They had mastered the void, but unlike the old empires of the stars, they did not rule with arrogance. Humanity had no throne to claim, no chains to cast over other species. They lived, they traded, they observed. And the galaxy, foolishly, mistook their quiet for weakness. The Zirith had been the first to probe too deeply into human space. A proud, cunning species whose empire stretched across 9 spiral arms, they were used to dominance. They measured other civilizations by compliance or extinction, and when they encountered humans, they saw no threat, only opportunity. But what they did not see, what no one had ever truly understood, was the one truth that bound every fragment of Earth's descendants together: humanity could endure anything except the deliberate spilling of innocent blood. It began with a colony. A garden world named Hestara, 7. The planet had been young, fertile, and alive with green oceans and silver forests. Settlers had lived there for less than a century, crafting their homes with care, preserving more than they consumed. It was a place whispered about as paradise, until the Zirith came. The invasion was not announced. It was not even war in the traditional sense. To the Zirith, it was nothing more than a correction, a simple sweep of pest control across their expanding borders. They descended in fleets, burning cities from orbit, dragging survivors into cages, and branding them as spoils. When the first distress calls reached the wider human colonies, they were garbled and broken. Static carried voices that begged for help, voices that screamed before vanishing mid-breath. And then, at last, came the one message that should never have existed, a transmission intercepted by human relays, Zirith commanders laughing as they described the fragile little apes they had broken. That laughter, it carried across the networks like venom. Humanity did not respond with panic. There were no wild calls for vengeance, no mobs demanding blood. Instead, there was silence, an iron silence, far heavier than the void itself. A silence that stretched across fleets and colonies alike, as if the entire species inhaled at once and refused to breathe out. The Zirith had not angered warriors. They had angered parents, siblings, survivors, and builders. They had angered the descendants of a species that had written their history in fire and risen from ashes too many times to count. For the first time in centuries, the war drums of humanity stirred. Admiral Soren Hale stood at the observation deck of the Titan-class supercarrier Aegis Eternum. His reflection looked back at him, hollow-eyed, jaw-tight. Below, dockyards bustled as fleets assembled in silence, each ship armed not for defense, but annihilation. "They burn children," Hale muttered, his voice shaking not with rage, but with something colder, something absolute. His aide, a young officer barely past her 20s, swallowed hard. "Sir, do we seek council approval?" Hale turned his gaze toward her. His eyes, steel gray, seemed to cut through the air. "The council can deliberate. Humanity does not." Across the colonies, the words were echoed in different forms, spoken in kitchens, in mines, in shipyards, in the quiet between lovers. "We do not forget. We do not forgive." The Zirith miscalculated once more. They believed humanity would retaliate like the others had, skirmishes, diplomacy, perhaps sanctions. But humans did not send envoys. They did not send demands. They simply came. The first counterstrike fell on Zirith outposts along the Karen Belt. The attackers were not professional soldiers but miners, merchants, and colonists armed with converted ships. They struck with precision, disabling stations, freeing captives, and leaving only one message carved into the metal hulls. "You made us angry." The galaxy took notice. Observers from neutral species whispered in shock. They had known humans as traders, artists, wanderers, the quiet folk of the spiral. Now they watched with unease as fleets gathered like storms, their silence speaking louder than any war cry. On Zereth Prime, the High Regent dismissed the reports as trivial. They are primitives, he declared to his council. Their worlds are scattered, their numbers diluted. Their anger will fade. But those words would not survive the turning of a single season. Back on the Aegis Eternum, Admiral Hale addressed his fleet. The broadcast was not ornate, nor dripping with rhetoric. It was simple, carried on a steady voice that brooked no doubt. They thought us weak. They thought us prey. They burned our homes, caged our families, and laughed as if we were nothing. But let them learn what it means to make humanity angry. This is not war. This is memory. This is justice. And when it is done, their name will not remain. It will turn to ashes, scattered and forgotten. We are the reckoning. And with that, the fleets departed. The first stars along the Zereth border flickered with fire. Outposts that had stood for centuries crumbled within days. Survivors whispered in terror, not because humanity shouted their intent, but because they did not. No transmissions. No threats. Only the slow, unstoppable advance of ships that carried silence as their banner. The Zereth had made their mistake. They had made humanity angry. And the galaxy was about to learn what that truly meant. The Zereth had fought countless enemies before. They had clashed with the crystalline Veiler, subjugated the insectoid HRYN, and even held the line against the starborn fleets of the Eldari. Each time, they had won by the same doctrine: overwhelming numbers, merciless strikes, and calculated cruelty. They believed humanity would break just the same. But what came against them was nothing like what the galaxy had seen before. The human fleets moved with precision that belied their size. Titan-class carriers and spearhead destroyers advanced in deliberate silence, while smaller strike vessels dismantled outposts with surgical efficiency. The Zereth expected glory broadcasts, demands, or ultimatums. Instead, they were met with nothing. Not a single human fleet transmitted threats. Not a single admiral gloated. There was only the silence of inevitability. To the Zereth, silence became terror. On the border world of Kairos, the planetary governor was awakened in the middle of the night by alarms. Human ships descended through the atmosphere, their black hulls blotting out the stars. Defense grids fired, every cannon, every missile. Yet the human assault never slowed. Shields absorbed fire like rain on stone. Ground installations erupted in flames, and within hours, Kairos was reduced to smoking ruins. But what struck the survivors most was not the destruction. It was the moment after, when human soldiers disembarked. They did not slaughter indiscriminately. They did not burn civilians. They freed cages, one after another, releasing human prisoners the Zereth had dragged here as spoils. And once the captives were safe, the soldiers gave the same command, repeated on every world they liberated. Leave. Tell them we are coming. Every survivor carried the message back. And with each fleeing refugee, the legend grew: humanity had no need for speeches, because their wrath spoke for them. In the halls of the Galactic Council, panic rippled like waves. The Council had always dismissed humans as minor players, reliable traders, skilled explorers, but not a martial power worth fearing. Now their fleets stretched across entire sectors, crushing Zereth strongholds with chilling consistency. The humans are out of control, hissed the Quarn delegate, his translucent skin pulsing with anxiety. They have not issued declarations. They have not opened channels. They are simply erasing the Zereth. Perhaps we should intervene, another offered. If the humans continue, there will be nothing left of the Zereth. Genocide cannot be allowed. A voice cut through the chamber, sharp and resonant. Genocide? All eyes turned to the human envoy, Ambassador Lear of A. Her dark uniform bore no ornament, only the crest of her people, a single flame, eternal. She did not shout. She did not plead. She simply spoke with a steady calm that made the chamber still. Do you call it genocide when predators slaughter prey? When conquerors butcher worlds? No one intervened when the Zirith burned our colonies. No one intervened when they dragged our children into cages. And now, when justice comes, you dare call it genocide? The chamber fell silent. For the first time, the galaxy realized the truth: humanity was not negotiating. They were declaring. Meanwhile, across the Zirith Empire, fear became chaos. On military outposts, commanders raged at the incompetence of their fleets, but even their most disciplined legions could not match the humans' relentless efficiency. On conquered worlds, enslaved species began to rise, emboldened by the sight of human warships cleaving through Zirith lines. Rebellion spread like wildfire, and with every uprising, humanity fanned the flames. At the edges of human-controlled space, stories grew wilder. Some claimed that the humans wielded ancient weapons buried beneath Earth itself, artifacts so powerful they could crack stars. Others whispered that humans were not flesh and blood at all, but vengeful spirits draped in metal hulls. The galaxy feared not only their strength, but the mystery of their silence. In truth, the humans needed no myth. They had something greater: unity. Admiral Hale's fleet became a tide, sweeping deeper into Zirith territory. Reports flooded in, worlds liberated, fleets dismantled, strongholds burned. On every battlefield, the same haunting image repeated itself: human banners raised not with triumph, but with grim resolve. It was not conquest. It was cleansing. On Zirith Prime, the High Regent paced his throne room, his claws scraping against marble. He could not understand. The humans were fewer. Their empire was smaller. Their fleets should have buckled under the weight of Zirith might. Yet every projection, every battle map showed the same result: humanity advancing, Zirith retreating. They should fear us, the regent snarled, slamming a clawed fist into the armrest. Why do they not fear us? A trembling advisor whispered, perhaps, Regent, because they have nothing left to lose. The word struck like a blade. The Zirith, who had built their empire on breaking the will of others, had encountered a foe that could not be broken. They had lit a fire that burned beyond reason, beyond calculation. They had awakened humanity's wrath. And now, their name began to wither. The turning point came at the siege of Varos. The Zirith had fortified the world with every weapon they possessed. Planetary cannons scarred the sky, fleets formed an iron wall, and shield matrices wrapped the capital in a cocoon of energy. It was here, the regent declared, that the humans would finally bleed. The battle raged for 3 days. Human fleets battered the defenses, waves of fire carving through enemy lines. Every Zirith ship destroyed was replaced by another, but still the humans pressed forward, unyielding. On the 4th day, the human flagship Aegis Eternum broke through. Admiral Hale's voice carried across the fleet, "This is not vengeance. This is justice." The shields of Varos fell, and human forces stormed the surface. They did not slaughter. They did not raze indiscriminately. They targeted command centers, slave camps, war factories. Within hours, the planet fell, not to rage, but to resolve. When the smoke cleared, prisoners were freed. Human banners were raised. And the Zirith commanders who had overseen the enslavement of Hestara, 7 were dragged from their citadels. Their names were erased from records. Their monuments were toppled. The message was clear: humanity was not here to conquer. They were here to erase. Across the galaxy, whispers grew louder. The Zirith had become cursed, their names spoken only in fear. And deep in the war rooms of human fleets, Admiral Hale gave his final command for the next stage. We end this. No half measures. No remnants. The Zirith made us angry. Now we make them history. The war was no longer about victory. It was about annihilation. The Zirith Empire was dying. Not with the thunderous roar of glorious battle, but with the slow, smothering suffocation of inevitability. Systems once rich with fleets now hung empty, their starports shattered husks. Planetary governors who once sneered at lesser species now fled like vermin, their names scrubbed from records before humanity could etch them into memory as criminals. Across the stars, the silence of humanity marched on. The galaxy had never seen a war like this. Not one fought for territory, not one waged for resources or conquest. This was something older. Something purer. It was justice wrapped in steel, wrath sharpened into precision. The humans did not seek surrender. They did not seek negotiation. They sought only the end of the Zirith. And every world they touched fell into the same ritual, prisons broken, captives freed, and monuments of the Zirith reduced to dust. It was not enough to defeat them. Humanity was erasing their name. On the flagship Aegis Aeternum, Admiral Soren Hale stood alone at the command dais. Around him, screens glowed with reports of victory after victory. Yet his expression bore no triumph. His jaw was tight, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes locked on the swirling hologram of their final target, Zirith Prime. "This is where it ends," he said quietly. Behind him, officers watched in silence. No one cheered. No one smiled. For they knew what was about to happen was not conquest, not liberation, it was execution. The fleet mobilized. The defense of Zirith Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Entire planetary rings bristled with cannons, while fleets thicker than asteroid belts patrolled the void. Every ounce of their remaining strength had been pulled here, a desperate wall against the inevitable tide. The High Regent himself stood at the Citadel's balcony, his claws trembling as he stared at the void. He whispered to himself, as though saying the words aloud would make them true. "They cannot destroy us. We are eternal. We are eternal." But the words rang hollow. Even he could feel it, the dread creeping into his bones, the silence pressing down like a suffocating weight. Humanity was coming. The first wave struck like thunder. Human dreadnoughts pierced the defense lines, unleashing salvos of kinetic spears and plasma storms. Zirith fleets crumbled under the assault, their formations torn apart with terrifying precision. Still, the Regent ordered them forward. "Fight! Fight, damn you!" But even as his commands echoed across the channels, another voice cut through, steady, unyielding. "Admiral Hale. This is humanity's judgment. You will not endure. You will not be remembered. This is the end of the Zirith." The word spread across the battlefield, carried by intercepts and open channels, broadcast even to the enslaved populations below. And in that moment, every soul, ally, enemy, and bystander alike, understood. Humanity was not here for territory. They were here to erase a name from history. The battle raged for 3 days. Zirith Prime skies turned red with fire, its oceans boiled with wreckage, its continents scarred with molten wounds. The Zirith fought with the desperation of a dying species, but desperation is not strength. On the 4th day, human marines stormed the capital itself. Streets that had once echoed with Zirith pride shook under the boots of silent soldiers. They moved with grim efficiency, dismantling resistance, securing captives, destroying war archives. Every symbol of Zirith power was shattered. Every monument was toppled. The High Regent was found in his citadel, clawing at the marble floor, muttering, "Eternal," over and over. He did not beg. He did not fight. He simply broke. When they dragged him before Admiral Hale, the Regent finally lifted his gaze. "Why?" he croaked, his voice raw. "You could have conquered. You could have ruled us. Why erase us?" Hale's eyes were cold steel. Because you made us angry. And with those words, the regent's name was stricken from every record. Not by decree, not by ceremony, but by silence. He was not executed with fanfare, he was erased, consigned to nothingness. When the fires settled, humanity did not plant banners on Zereth Prime. They did not claim it as a jewel of conquest. Instead, they left it hollow. Libraries burned, archives deleted, history dismantled. The world became a graveyard, stripped of its name. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. For the first time, an empire had not merely fallen, it had been erased. Where once the Zereth had ruled 9 arms of the spiral, there was now only absence. Maps were redrawn, their territory marked as uninhabited space. Their language faded from tongues. Their songs, their symbols, their very existence turned to dust. And humanity spoke only one phrase, repeated in whispers across every colony, every fleet. Let them be forgotten. In the halls of the Galactic Council, delegates trembled as they debated. The humans have set a precedent, one whispered. They did not conquer. They annihilated. If they can erase the Zereth, what of us? What of anyone who offends them? Ambassador Lyra Vey rose once more. Her expression bore neither cruelty nor mercy, only truth. Do not mistake us. Humanity does not seek empires. We do not crave dominion. But we will endure, and we will protect. And should any species ever again think to burn our homes, to cage our children, to laugh at our pain, they will learn what the Zereth learned. Her words hung heavy, as if carved into the marrow of every delegate present. This galaxy is vast, she finished softly. But it is not vast enough to contain humanity's wrath when roused. Remember that. And for generations afterward, they did. Years later, travelers would pass through the ruins of the Zereth worlds. They would see shattered citadels, collapsed monuments, silent cities left to rot beneath alien suns. They would ask what species had once lived there. And the answer would always be the same. No one remembers. Their name turned to ashes. The humans returned to their colonies, to their lives, to their quiet. They did not revel in victory. They did not sing songs of conquest. They carried instead the weight of memory, the voices of Hestara, 7, the laughter that had sparked their fury, the silence that followed. And in that silence, the galaxy learned its greatest lesson. Humanity was not to be feared for its power. Humanity was to be feared for its anger. For the last species that made humans angry was erased. And their name was never spoken again.